Hi everyone, it's Clive. Welcome to the Mitchell Brewery. As you can see, I'm geared up for doing a little bit of brewing. It's been a little while, so I'll just walk you through what I'm planning to do. If you've seen any of my videos recently, you'll know, well, when I say recently, it's been since January, I think, since the last one. I've moved on to kit brewing, and what I've got here is a Cooper's, which is the Australian brand, Canadian blonde. As you can see, I've got a bargain. Half price. So what I'm planning to do is make this blonde. I'm not a massive fan of blonde ales, to be perfectly frank, so I'm planning to amp it up with some hops. So hopefully I'm going to create my own version of a sort of blonde / pale ale, some nice hoppy beer. I've got the can of malt extract in some really hot tap water, and this will then soften up the extract. I'm going to basically transfer the sterilising solution. I've got my primary soaking into these bottles, so they'll be ready for the bottling phase. And if you just nip over, you can see I've got a couple of fermentation bins. Always good to have a spare as well. So this one's full of sterilising solution and all the bits and bobs, and that one basically gets sterilised when I transfer that solution to there, and then into the bottles. Let's crack on. Here we go. Just pop the top of the can. This is what it looks like. Really sticky stuff. I'm just going to pour this into, oh, look at that. That's some gloopy, treacly stuff. And I'm going to rinse it out, because it won't all come out in one go. I'll rinse it out with some hot water just to make sure I get every single scrap of the good stuff. Here we can go. I've got the malt extract in the primary, and I washed out the tin. You can see it's completely clean now, and it's all looking pretty gloopy in there still, so I need to add obviously more water. But the next thing I need to do is add some additional brewing sugar, and I'm going to add 500 grams of this spray malt light and also 500 grams of this brewing sugar. Now the spray malt light is a mixture of malt extract and dextrose. This is mostly dextrose, this one. So this gives you extra sugar to ferment, because there's obviously not enough in that little tiny tin. That's a bit of a swizz, I think, when you do these things. You think you buy this tin, read the small print, because it says you've got to add extra stuff. So there's instructions there. If you go to DIYbeer.com, you can find out the instructions for making this particular beer, the Canadian blonde. So I've added the sugar, and as you can see, some quite big lumps in here. Look at that, a big lump of sugar in there. That's not, according to the recipe on that website, it says don't worry, these will dissolve over the course of fermentation. Also, I've got to top this up to 23, because at the minute, what we're looking at, a couple of litres maybe. So these need to go up to 23 litres. So I'm going to be adding more water, cold water and warm water, try and getting the temperature up to about, what does it say, 21 degrees, something like that. There's actually you can see on the side of my fermenter, I've actually got, you can't really see it, like a thermometer thing. And that's how I'll monitor the temperature. I've always got a thermometer here as well. So what are we at the minute? So we are, oh, okay. Yeah, it's quite hot. It's over 30 at least, so it's got to come down. But the cold water will soon bring that down. I'm making sure that's sterilised as well. Look at that. There we go. The sugary solution of the malt extract is in here. And as you can see, it's showing between 20 and 22. So I was targeting 21. So next thing I've got to do is add the yeast. This is the yeast that came with the beer kit. What I've done, I boiled some water, filled up this cup, and used the boiling water to sterilise the cup. Tipped out half of it, and I've allowed it to cool. In order to speed up the cooling process, I basically immersed the cup in some cold water in here. That brought down the cooling very quickly. to around about 21, 22 degrees. So what I've done, I've just tipped in the yeast. This is the yeast hydration process. I will let it sit there for 10 minutes and then I'll give it a stir. And then in about sort of half an hour or an hour or so, I'll then add it to the beer. So it should be nicely hydrated by then. There we go, this is the yeast hydrated, ready to go. So I'm just gonna put this in here. So give it a swirl round, lovely swirl. I try to get all the yeast in there, and then just don't want to miss any of the yeast. And then give the bits of wort a lovely stir around. So this is going to be sealed up now. I've got my airlock on here and I'll leave this for about a week, and then I shall add the dry hops, and that'll be the next part of the video. This has been bubbling away for about 5 days, and what I'm going to do today, I'm going to add some hops. This is the dry hopping stage. So what I've got here, I've got Columbus and Sars hops. I'm going to add about sort of 40 grams of the Columbus and about, say, 20 grams of the Sars. I've got this sort of mesh tube. I've got some marbles to weigh it down. I'm going to pop that into the primary. I'm also going to take a sample of the beer as well. I've got this sterilising, so I've got to get 200 mils. And then I'll use my sort of handy measuring cylinders and my hydrometer to work out how we're doing with the fermentation. This is what the beer looks like at this stage. You can see a little bit on the hazy side. I've just tried a bit. It's tasting a bit bland. That's why I'm adding the hops, basically, to give it a little bit more flavour. Just added my hydrometer. Readings are running a little higher, but to be honest, I'm going to be dry hopping for another sort of like 5 days. The more fermentation will carry on. That should bring it down to the required sort of original, the final gravity range. Less than 1.01 is what I'm aiming for. This is what the hops look like. Yes, a little bit like rabbit food, but basically this is sort of like hops which have been pelletized. You can get loose leaf hops as well, but pellets seems to be the thing that you get these days. You used to be able to get loose leaf hops more regularly, but it seems now that everyone has pellets. You'll see I've added some marbles, and the reason for that is basically just to weigh this down, so it just sort of bob around inside the fermenter, and hopefully it will sink into the fermenter itself. It's beer bottling day, so I've got 42 bottles. I've just emptied up the sterilising solution. It's doubling up to clean out the various things that I'm using. I've got the caps in there and the siphon, and here it is. Here's the beer. I use this thing to stabilise the bottles when I'm putting the caps on, and that's the crown capper. So let's get on with it. I've dissolved 180 grams of sugar into 500 mils of boiled water. I've got a little syringe. I'm going to add 10 mils of the sugary solution to each of the bottles. It should give me about 3.5 grams per bottle, I've calculated, and that's enough for the sort of second stage carbonation of the beer, and that'll reactivate the yeast, and that'll then carbonate the beer. So you get a bit of secondary fermentation going on in the bottles, and that then generates CO2 and you get fizzy beer. That's the plan. Ready for siphoning. So the lid's off. You can see the beer. You can see just at the bottom there, you can see a little bit of sediment. I've got my siphon ready. I've primed it with a bit of water, and when I put the siphon in, what I'm hoping is that water will come through and then drag the beer through with it into the bottles. That's the theory anyway. Well, that worked like a charm. And now you can see my magic bottling wand, which you can see has got little things sticking out the end. When that gets depressed upwards, that lets it, the fluid out. So at the minute, that's sort of being held down by the pressure of the fluid. So the next thing to do is to use this bottling wand to fill up the bottles. Next up, I'm going to apply these caps, and this thing here, the cap goes in there, and then basically it's squeezed onto the top of the bottle. You can see that the sides of the cap are sort of crimped onto the top of the bottle. There you go, 39 bottles of my amped up Canadian Blonde. Going to come up with a name. I've got a name, not happy with it, but I'm going to have another go. So yeah, hopefully these will be ready. What's it now? The 29th of November. So hopefully this will be ready in time for Christmas. Woohoo! That's me done for another video, guys. Happy brewing. Cheers.